call.
There's not enough to call it a suicide.
Tonight, 2020's investigation lighting a fire under an 8-year-old cold case.
The family's strongest argument is this abrasion.
Follow along as we retrace Annie's final hours far from home.
So Annie might have been here on Halloween night.
No stone left unturned, doing the job they say the police didn't.
They treated this evidence like trash.
From a pastry shop
She goes, oh my gosh, that's her. She was here.
to a funeral home,
We always thought murder right away.
the Capitol to the state penitentiary,
Our first question was, did he kill her daughter?
and finally the police, with nothing new to say to the parents, but talking to 2020.
What do you say to this family who says you didn't do your job, that you left them hanging?
Answers for Annie. Good evening, I'm Elizabeth Vargas. David is on assignment tonight. At a time when so many of you have your children home for the summer, these parents have a never-ending mission. Still trying to find out what happened to their teenage daughter, how she died 8 years after the fact. 8 years after the police say they do know what happened. What will you decide tonight? Join the conversation. We're live on Facebook and Twitter as Deborah Roberts tries to find answers for Annie. Alexandria, Virginia, a stone's throw from the nation's capital, an upscale suburb in Fairfax County with historic cobblestone streets, pleasant homes, and top-notch schools like West Potomac High. On Vantage Drive, it was the picture of tranquility until early Halloween morning in 2008.
And then this is Annie's room.
Is it hard to come in here?
No, it's joyful because it's Annie.
It was barely 6 a.m., and Dan McCann was saying goodbye to his 16-year-old daughter, Annie, before heading off to his managerial job with TSA in D.C. His wife, Mary Jane, a former White House IT worker and now stay-at-home mom, was on her way to upstate New York to visit the couple's son, Sam, in college. Annie, a high school junior, was a passionate artist and good student who played basketball and made her mom laugh.
Annie was funny, quirky, witty.
She was just a delight. She was just a person that I feel like everybody liked Annie.
Former classmate China Johnson Owens first met Annie in 7th grade.
Annie McCann was an angel on earth, honestly.
Her parents say Annie was young for her age, sheltered, a homebody. There was no Snapchat or Instagram yet, and the McCanns heavily monitored their daughter's time online.
She could barely work a flip phone, and she just got her Facebook account.
So I said, yes, you can have the Facebook account, but I get to look at it when I want. I want the passwords, everything.
What's here that she did?
It wasn't an issue since Annie preferred drawing and painting anyway.
That is really pretty though.
Look at the colors.
Her work decorating the family home.
She was talented.
Very, very much so. Always put everything in a frame for her so she knew that it was important.
Her big obsession was capturing her cherished dog, Breezy Max.
She absolutely loved her dog, Breezy.
That's
and
a
he's
painting.
at the top of...
I actually thought that was a photo for a second.
No.
Annie's artistic touch even extended to Halloween, with goodie bags she insisted on making.
She was too old to trick or treat, so she transferred her enthusiasm into giving the gifts out.
But just hours before trick-or-treaters would arrive, the first hint of trouble. Annie hadn't phoned her mom, something out of character.
Oh, she always called me like clockwork after school.
Mary Jane knew her daughter's routine. Straight home after school, and if neither mom nor dad were home, she'd call. Up in Ithaca, New York at Sam's college, when Mary Jane didn't get that usual ring of reassurance, she worried.
You know, as a mom, you just know. I got this gut. Something's not right. And so I called a neighbor. I said, are any signs of Annie? No. Any signs of the car? No.
Annie used the family's white Volvo to get to and from school.
Thoughts going through my mind. Oh my God, what if she's... And you're thinking, what if she's... Oh my God, what if she's in a car accident? Please, God, let her be okay.
A panicked Mary Jane calls Dan, who rushes home and finds the house phone ringing. Would it be Annie or someone who knows where she is?
The answer is it's an automated message from the Fairfax County Public School System reporting that your son or daughter was absent today. The whole day. I almost collapsed.
So now you realize she was never even at school.
Right. So I call the police. Get over here now.
There's little to go on, and the Fairfax County officer who arrives isn't overly concerned. Maybe this is a typical teen acting out.
People were saying, don't worry, she just ran away, she'll be back. Kids do this all the time. It's not uncommon. Don't worry about it.
But Mary Jane is worried. Her daughter is far from rebellious and only recently had gotten her ears pierced. She's diligent about keeping them clean.
first aid spray Bactine. Keep that in mind. You won't believe how important it will be later. With no sign of Annie, her mom is frantic and begins making the achingly long 6-hour drive back home to Virginia. What state are you in as you're driving?
I know I drove right through somebody's farm and finally got on some highway. I mean, we were like just stunned in the car and, driving fast and not stopping. And like, why can't I get this car home faster? We have to find Annie.
We didn't know where the hell to go. We didn't know what to do. We did the best we could.
How did you get through that first night?
I don't know.
It was torture, wasn't it?
It was torture, yeah.
But the torment is only beginning.
When the call came in, I was told it was a dead junkie behind a dumpster.
Not even 48 hours later, homicide detective Sean Jones responds to a call.
I really honestly thought it would be a 20-minute type it up and be done. Not so much.
But the call isn't in Alexandria, it's here, the Perkins Homes housing project in Baltimore, Maryland, 50 miles and another world away from the McCann's bucolic neighborhood. And behind a dumpster in this section of the so-called Charm City, a man taking out the trash makes a gruesome discovery. And it's no junkie at all. So you find the body of a white teen girl at a predominantly black housing project. What was your first thought?
That it was a homicide. It was a homicide. And we treated it as such.
Jones, a 25-year veteran Baltimore cop, knows right away this is an unusual case. When you first looked at her, was there an apparent cause of death?
No.
Did it look like she had been beaten up?
No.
The Perkins Homes covers several square blocks in a high-crime area, just minutes from Baltimore's famed Inner Harbor and Camden Yards. Soon enough, Detective Jones discovers that the dead girl has a backpack nearby and papers that reveal a stunning fact. She's not from Baltimore, not even close.
I find a hall pass for Fairfax County High Schools. I find her driver's license. And I have people back at the office call the Fairfax PD.
A half hour later, the identity is confirmed. It's Annie McCann. Detective Jones leaves the ugly crime scene, driving to suburban Virginia to break the news to the McCanns in person. How as a parent do you even...
You can't. You're in shock.
Do you ask any questions at this point, or are you just collapsed in grief?
You're collapsing grief.
How did a sheltered girl from the suburbs wind up here? Amazingly, Annie McCann herself may have left behind the biggest clue. When we come back, the note found in Annie's bedroom. Is it a roadmap to what or who led to her demise?
She'd say, "Dear Mom and Dad." She'd never write a note not saying "Dear Mom and Dad."
What does it reveal? See what happens next. Nightfall in Baltimore, trapped between a dark harbor and sinister sky. A city with a long history of murder and mystery, ever since Edgar Allan Poe wrote and died here. Now it's the case of Annie McCann that captivates. How does a white 16-year-old girl from the Virginia suburbs wind up dead here in the projects? Her stunned parents haunted this Halloween night by a note left on their daughter's bed.
This morning I was going to kill myself, but I realized I can start over instead. If you really love me, you'll let me go.
What started as a suicide note was beginning to sound like a runaway note. Goodbye.
I know I'm only 16, but I'm almost 17. I'll be careful. That's how that note ended. I'll be careful.
Why would she run away? Was there something brewing that maybe...
Well, apparently.
But was there something possible that you could look back on and think, maybe she was upset about this?
No. Dan called me and told me, and I'm like, dropping the phone like, what?
What, indeed. Equally as confounding as what they will learn later, that Annie had taken $1,000 in cash, money she'd stashed away, all her favorite clothes, even a box of Cheerios. But nothing in the note hints at where she's going. Did Baltimore make any sense to you? Was there any connection to Baltimore?
No connection to Baltimore. No sense at all. Annie could not even find her way to Baltimore.
There were all sorts of unusual angles to this.
To Washington Post Metro writer Tom Jackman, the mysterious death of a 16-year-old girl is big news.
Beyond the fact that a suburban girl was found dead in the inner city of Baltimore, there's no real explanation for how she died.
You don't see this very often.
No.
It wasn't the usual bill of fare for Baltimore homicide detective Sean Jones either.
90 to 95% of the cases we're dealing with are African-American males that are shot on a street corner. I'm obviously going to look at this twice and not just glance over it as your average everyday case.
Then the case seems to crack like one of those famous Maryland crabs. First, police find Annie's Volvo abandoned at a gas station. Then, a tiny clue, a smudge. It's a fingerprint that matches someone already in their database. Could it be Annie's killer?
We had to get the fingerprint processed, and then once we got the name back from the fingerprint, that's when we moved on that.
Turns out the print belongs to a teen boy who says he and some friends came across the car in the projects. He says Annie, face down in the back, is already dead. So, as twisted as it sounds, they dump her body and go joyriding in her car.
So these boys just dumped her body?
Yes, ma'am.
And took the car?
Yes, ma'am.
One young man connected to the group, Darnell Kinlaw. Remember that name because you'll hear it again. But police don't charge him or anyone with assaulting Annie, in part because of the condition of her body. They're certain Annie was not beaten, strangled, stabbed, or shot.
When I initially met the McCanns, I made it very clear that I didn't know what we had, and that the autopsy, 99.9% of the time, is going to give us more clarity on what we're dealing with.
Then the autopsy results are in, and they're a surprise to everyone. Annie had a small amount of alcohol in her blood, but a large amount of something else. Lidocaine.
Lidocaine.
Lidocaine?
100 lidocaine?
It's a drug you may have heard of on those medical shows like Grey's Anatomy.
Nasal speculum lidocaine. To finally relieve your pain, now's the time for lidocaine.
It's also a common numbing agent in all kinds of over-the-counter products, including Bactine.
Relieves pain on contact. Bactine.
The antiseptic Annie had for her newly pierced ears.
Did you even know what Bactine was at
I
that
did,
point?
yeah. I have kids myself. I knew exactly what it was. And I knew what the active ingredients were.
But it's there in black and white. Annie died of lidocaine poisoning. Back at that gas station, crime scene investigators find what in any other case might be an innocuous piece of trash. But now Detective Jones considers it a smoking gun.
We found near the car a Bactine bottle that had the lid removed. It's not a screw-top bottle. It's something that requires a little bit of force to get off.
And Annie's DNA is discovered on the exposed part of the bottle. The medical examiner who did the autopsy won't guess how the lidocaine got into Annie's system, calling it undetermined. But the seasoned detectives have no doubt it's suicide.
But who kills themselves with Bactine?
People kill themselves. I've been in homicide for 15 years, and they get very creative. And this is just one of those methods.
To the authorities, this was a pretty open and shut case. She died of a lidocaine overdose. Problem is, it's so rare to find that someone died of that kind of overdose that it's going to lead to some questions.
This doesn't add up. This can't be. This is what you came up with, that she drank a bottle of Bactine?
And the McCanns are taking notes on other things that don't add up.
It was sound of the Baltimore police to consider suicide. It is reprehensible to conclude suicide.
They don't buy it, as they explain in an article they later write. If Annie was going to kill herself, they ask, why go all the way to Baltimore to do it? And if she drank that Bactine, why did the police not find her fingerprints on the bottle?
Her prints and our prints should be all over that bottle. Who wipes fingerprints while killing themselves?
And who writes a to-do list like Annie did on her hand if they're planning to end it all, reminding her to do her chores and say her prayers?
We thought it was a baffling mystery. Nobody's heard of anybody overdosing on Bactine, much less a kid from the suburbs who didn't seem to be that unhappy with life. And so we continued to press forward with the story.
And the story was far from over. When we come back, the McCanns are about to get disturbing new details about their daughter's death, not from detectives or the medical examiner. Try the funeral director and why she thinks suicide is out of the question.
We always thought murder right away.
You thought murder right away.
We did.
It's a ritual no parent should ever endure. Dan and Mary Jane McCann bury their daughter Annie a week after her death in this cemetery not far from their Virginia home. But no one is resting peacefully. In a curious and cruel blunder, the McCanns say the medical examiner's office failed to restore 2 of Annie's organs after her autopsy.
Your daughter's heart and brain were not returned to her body.
No.
How is that possible?
I don't know. You tell me.
The McCanns are outraged. They say it's unheard of and wonder if the medical examiner could somehow lose their daughter's heart and brain. What else was botched? That's where Diane Downey comes in. We tracked her down at this Alexandria funeral home where she spent 25 years preparing bodies for burial. She says she was unnerved after receiving Annie's.
What did you think? There's absolutely no way this was a suicide with all the trauma on her body.
Trauma? Dan and Mary say police told them there was none. So what about the goose egg-like bruise on Annie's forehead? So unsightly the McCanns hesitated over an open casket.
I kept going back to the detectives, but they kept dismissing it as, no, they were just minor abrasions.
They were told minor abrasions, no evidence of an assault. And they see this. And so now, they're probably really thinking, there's something more here.
Downey was reluctant to share her suspicions with the grieving family, but the McCanns' heartbreak and bewilderment only grew much later when they would get their daughter's autopsy photos.
And I know these are hard for you to look at.
They're convinced they see a cigarette burn on her forehead, a mysterious letter J on her ankle, and worst of all, they think they see signs of a sexual assault.
I was horrified. It's like, oh my God, my daughter was tortured.
The McCanns suspect that their daughter is a victim of a crime, especially when that funeral director points out what she sees as another bizarre detail. Annie's fingers. It looks to her that they're wilted.
Her fingers were shriveled, like they were raisins, like her body had been soaked for several hours.
Did that concern you?
Very much.
Was this a result of someone trying to wash away evidence?
Baltimore City Police will not reopen its investigation.
The case is closed.
Police may be standing down, but the McCanns are only ramping up their own investigation, and the media is all over the story.
The McCanns have made it. They were not happy with their daughter's death investigation.
And the parents are relentless.
The police do nothing and they sweep it under.
Baltimore Police never honestly investigated Annie's death.
They begin emptying their savings, even Annie's college fund, to get at the truth, buying billboards around town, and then assembling their own dream team, starting with perhaps America's most famous medical examiner, Dr. Michael Baden, a fixture on Fox News. You looked through the materials. What struck you right away?
What struck me right away was the circumstances first, that she was found by a dumpster. Somebody dumped the body there after death, and usually that happens in homicidal situations.
Baden says in 50 years of death investigations, he's never heard of anyone killing themselves by drinking Bactine. And in his opinion, there wouldn't be enough lidocaine in one bottle to kill Annie anyway.
So you were convinced that Annie McCann did not commit suicide by drinking Bactine?
That was my opinion, yes.
That's when it went, for me personally, it went, holy cow, she was murdered.
Still, no change in posture for the Baltimore police.
If you come across being angry, no one's going to help you. You come across, if you're nice, no one's going to help you.
Disappointed and desperate, the McCanns march on, all the way, in fact, up to Capitol Hill.
This committee
To Senator Charles Grassley, one of the country's most powerful members of Congress, chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee.
If I can help, I want to help.
From Iowa, he isn't even the McCann senator, but they don't call him Hawkeyes for nothing.
Do you think the Baltimore PD blew it?
It looks to me like when they don't answer questions, they raise a lot of unnecessary suspicion. And if they want to avoid this suspicion, then it's pretty simple. Just come clean.
Grassley sent off official letters to the Baltimore police and the FBI. They wrote back defending the investigation and stand by the conclusion Annie most likely died from self-ingestion of Bactine. But Grassley also wrote to the makers of Bactine, the Bayer Corporation, and got another story entirely.
What exactly did you hear from Bayer about lidocaine?
Pretty simple. That one bottle of Bactine would not cause a suicide.
In fact, Bayer claims it previously told the Baltimore police the same thing.
Back in here.
Her body was found back in here?
Yep, right in here.
Which leads us to this man, the captain of the McCann Dream Team.
It's not your usual death. This is a mystery that stumped everybody. I mean, there's other
Jim Consis, a private eye and former Baltimore cop himself, now on Annie's trail.
Her name's Annie, white girl from Virginia. No, her.
He retraced his steps with us,
I canvassed the whole area. Went door to door for months.
literally walking me through his investigation.
Hey, guys.
Approaching anyone and everyone he could, like these folks at the Perkins homes.
So we're just trying to fill in the blanks on how the body got behind the dumpster.
But have you ever heard of anybody talking about the case? No?
Did you hear any scuttlebutt about it when you moved in? Like,
No.
What might have happened to it?
No.
Then, hitting the road.
Now we're getting in the heart of Phil's Point.
So Annie might have been here on Halloween night.
Yeah, she could have been.
The key for Consis, determining where Annie was after leaving home, and with whom.
What would this area be like on Halloween?
Packed. Because all the bars are down there.
In fact, Fells Point is one big party on Halloween, with throngs of young people celebrating and taping the festivities. This footage shot the very night Annie disappeared. Conza says Annie may have been among the revelers. Then, a big moment on this quiet block of Albemarle Street.
This is basically Little Italy. You got all the Italian restaurants here.
He arrives here, Vaccaro's, a Baltimore bakery famous for its pastries. When we come back, a very sweet clue. The trail doesn't end in that bakery. Who are the McCanns about to question inside this prison? Stay with us. Vaccaro's pastry shop is a landmark in Baltimore's Little Italy.
An espresso.
Famous for cappuccino and cannoli, it would become the setting for a stunning development in the case of Annie McCann. What brought you here?
I know she had a sweet tooth, and her body was found over there, and she loved yogurt, pastries, and I'm thinking, why not take a shot?
It's 3 months after Annie's death, and the McCann family private investigator Jim Kunzis is showing Annie's picture to workers here.
So you came up to the counter here?
Yeah, I came up to counter.
A clerk takes a look at the picture.
One guy goes, oh, yeah, I think I remember her. Yeah, she was cute.
Then a server sees the photo, and it's as if someone dropped a pile of dishes.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. That's her.
Remember her.
She was here.
Here, alive and well, sipping a cappuccino with extra whipped cream. Then a jaw-dropping revelation. Annie was not alone.
Yeah, she was with another girl. And then that's when the description came out.
A sketch artist is soon giving that description a face.
So you got the server here to give you the details to come up with the sketch.
Right, and then once the sketch was complete, she looked at it, she says, that's her.
This is Annie's companion, according to a waitress. A haunting image of a tall, dark-haired woman, older than Annie, late teens, early 20s, disheveled, tired, looking like trouble.
She had heavy makeup. She had the ugliest fingernail polish you would ever see. It's puke yellow. Puke yellow. She had heavy-duty bags underneath her eyes, like she was tired.
As a detective, what's going on in your head at this moment?
I'm thinking, that's good. I got a hit.
You think this woman could be the key to solving this death?
Right.
This is big stuff, isn't it?
It ultimately does not have anything to do with Annie's death.
Sean Jones, the lead Baltimore detective on the case, says they looked into it, and he is not impressed. Not by the sighting of Annie, not by the mystery woman with her. But if she's sitting and having coffee or a dessert with a disheveled young woman,
sure,
that doesn't set off any bells for you?
Of course it does. It's important, but ultimately we weren't able to verify that it even happened.
The McCanns also released this sketch of a woman seen with Annie in Little Italy the day before her death.
The McCanns publicized the sketch, hoping someone will recognize the girl with puke-colored fingernails, one person who might possibly be able to shed light on their daughter's death. There have been many leads over the years, but they've never been able to track her down. Every time they would find a lead, then they'd, hit a dead end, and it's like the mystery continues. Just when many might have given up, the case of Annie McCann takes another strange turn. Nearly 3 years after her death, a murder with what be eerie parallels makes the news in Baltimore. 26-year-old Lakeisha Player is murdered and her car stolen. When police name the killer, the McCanns are flabbergasted.
Police believe the killer is this man, 21-year-old Darnell Kinlaw.
Darnell Kinlaw is accused of murdering Lakeisha Player in her Kentucky Avenue home this month and stealing her car.
The same Darnell Kinlaw previously questioned in Annie's case, and who the McCanns believe had been involved in tossing their daughter's body and taking her Volvo on that joyride.
That same guy then gets arrested for murdering someone and taking their car. It's a big coincidence.
Annie's case comes roaring back into the headlines.
The arrest was of 21-year-old Darnell Kinlaw for the murder of his girlfriend. Kinlaw was eventually charged with the unlawful taking of Annie McCann's car in 2008.
Awfully close to the same kind of circumstances.
I'd argue otherwise. He shot her and stole her car in a domestic incident. Has no similarities to Annie's case.
Do you think he knows more than he's told you?
No. As a matter of fact, I think that it tells the opposite, that if he were to murder someone, he's going to use a gun. He's going to use the standard method, and that he's not going to poison someone with lidocaine.
For years, the McCanns have wanted to question Kinlaw themselves, convinced they might be able to get something more out of him about Annie's death. Now, on a gray June day, nearly 8 years after Annie's death, they will get their chance. Kinlaw has surprisingly agreed to meet with them. Dan and Mary Jane leave their Fairfax County home for the nearly 3-hour ride across Maryland.
Are you nervous?
No.
Why not? Because I know that we might not get anything.
Yeah, that's what I fully expect. They might accidentally tell the truth or do it on purpose. We're going to interview one of what we believe are 5 thugs, at least 4, and we believe 5, who dumped Annie's dead or dying body from her car, and then took the car for a joyride. Give us this day our daily bread and forgive us our trespasses.
Praying as they drive and strategizing.
We want to know the circumstances under which he found the car, found Annie. Had he seen her before? Had he seen her with anybody else? And can he please find it in his heart to help us find out who, not him, murdered our beautiful daughter?
Coming up, are the McCanns face-to-face with their daughter's killer? Does Darnell Kinlaw have answers about Annie? Watch what happens next.
Continues with answers for Annie.
Dan and Mary Jane McCann drive 150 miles across Maryland, doing the kind of detective work they say the Baltimore police are not. They're going to question Darnell Kinlaw, a young man they believe was involved in dumping their daughter's body and joyriding in her car in Baltimore nearly 8 years ago. Kinlaw's now doing 30 years for murdering his girlfriend, Lakeisha Player, and taking her car.
That takes a lot of guts. For these parents to walk into a maximum security prison and sit down and interview the man who they think may have killed their daughter.
He was on the other side of thick glass. We could hear each other very well.
They make small talk with the killer and even pray together.
And I said, Darnell, I take it from you, you're a Christian. And he said, yes. I said, would you mind if we started with a prayer? And he said, no. And he joined us.
Then Dan gets down to brass tacks.
Our first question was, this is maybe the hardest question we're going to ask you, DJ, or maybe the easiest. Did he kill her daughter? No. You know, we had to ask, okay.
They say Kinlaw seemed genuinely upset at times, but as he looked into their heartbroken faces, they say he offered nothing that would end their misery.
Nothing. So we worked a long time to get to see Darnell Law. Finally got to. We got pretty much what we expected, which is nothing. We learned that he knows almost nothing about Annie's death.
Weary after struggling nearly 8 years now to prove that their daughter didn't take her own life, the McCanns' anger toward the Baltimore police is as raw as ever. We questioned lead detective Sean Jones about the McCanns' accusations, and we also confronted his boss, Colonel Stanley Branford.
The McCanns say that the Baltimore Police Department took the easy way out. By labeling this as suicide, they were able to wash their hands of it and move on to another crime.
I'm sorry that they feel that way, but that's simply not the way we approach this case. I can tell you that this case has been thoroughly investigated, not only by us, by the FBI, that we asked to come in and evaluate our investigation.
Doesn't this family deserve more answers?
We've given them all we can give. We cannot provide answers that we do not have. We possibly believe that Annie McCann committed suicide.
Suicide? But this is a girl who lived in the suburbs. Why would she drive 50 miles to a housing project in Baltimore to commit suicide?
Well, that I can't answer because I don't know the mindset of Annie at that time.
But police do share stunning evidence with us the McCanns did not. We already knew about the letter Annie wrote saying she was going to kill herself and changed her mind. But now police reveal their investigation found other notes in which Annie talks about suffering with anorexia and depression. She writes to a friend, "My suicide has nothing to do with you." In another note, "Pressure has gotten to me. I can't do it anymore." And no one blamed themselves for this. This is all on me.
In all of her writings, she had indicated that she was leaving, and she expressed to some degree that she was tired of living.
In response, the McCanns insist Annie did not intend those as suicide notes. One was found crumpled up under her bed, the other partly crossed out.
Now, my heart goes out to her parents. We have responded to every request that they made. We responded to every piece of information that came in.
After 1,200 hours on the case, the Baltimore Police Department stands by its belief that Annie took her own life by drinking Bactine. It's a critical question at the core of Annie McCann's death. Is there enough lidocaine in a single 5-ounce bottle of Bactine to kill a 16-year-old girl? The McCanns' medical experts are at odds with the Baltimore So 2020 contacted Dr. Bill Mannion, a board-certified forensic pathologist. He estimates he's determined cause and manner of death in 2,500 cases over the years, but not one of them involved Bactine or lidocaine.
Bactine, I had never heard of that before. I to be honest, I didn't know it was capable of killing you, but it is capable because it has lidocaine in it, and lidocaine is a toxic drug.
He says a bottle of Bactine does contain a potentially fatal dose of lidocaine.
Yes, there is enough in a bottle of Bactine to kill someone. Even in a half a bottle, they're roughly 2 grams, and that would be enough to cause death.
Even the McCann's own expert, Dr. Bodden, says some of their worst fears about what happened to their daughter are unfounded.
The funeral director felt convinced that she saw signs that Annie might have been sodomized. Did you see any indication of that in either the photos or in any of the material you reviewed?
No, I didn't. I don't see evidence that she was sexually assaulted.
As for that distinctive-looking letter J on Annie's ankle, Dr. Bodden says it may just be an accidental pattern from blood settling.
Was the way the blood settled in the body after she had died.
So you don't think that was a marking, a letter, or some kind of a tattoo?
That's correct.
You don't think so?
I do not think so.
There's also some talk that there may have been a cigarette burn on her head.
But I don't think it was a cigarette burn.
You don't think that was another sign of some kind of abuse?
No.
On one of our visits with the McCanns, they show us bins of evidence they say the police returned to them.
How long has it been since you've gone through these things?
Years.
And there, among Annie's things, a discovery that seems to surprise even her parents.
Digital camera.
Her digital camera still sealed in a police evidence bag. Is it possible this has gone untouched and unnoticed for nearly 8 years? Mary Jane plugs the memory card into a laptop. When we come back, what Annie's camera saw. Stay with us. Nearly 8 years after Annie McCann's strange death in Baltimore, her parents do something they say they've never done before. Search the memory card of her camera, stored among evidence in their garage. This is what they find. 14 photos, apparently taken by Annie.
It says May 2008.
But the pictures couldn't be more innocent. Later, Baltimore police tell us they checked that camera years ago. Yet another disappointing dead end. But the McCanns are determined to keep fighting.
Her death needs to be changed to homicide.
The McCanns feel that the Baltimore PD botched this case. Did you botch it?
No, ma'am. Not at all.
What if you're wrong? What if there's a murderer out there and you missed it?
I'm not.
You're convinced that this is a suicide?
Yes, ma'am.
No doubt in your mind?
None whatsoever. There's absolutely no evidence to indicate that this is a murder.
Recently, Mary Jane took another road trip. An emotional journey to Baltimore.
We're going to go meet Wanda Player. She is just a really very special lady.
That special lady Wanda is Lakeisha Player's aunt. The McCanns bonded with her when the two families were attending court appearances for Lakeisha's killer, Darnell Kinlaw.
September 7th, 1996. And fans packed into a Las Vegas nightclub, eagerly awaiting a performance by one of the hottest artists in Shit. September 7th, 1996. And fans packed into a Las Vegas nightclub, eagerly awaiting a performance by one of the hottest artists on the planet. A brilliant trailblazing rapper, Tupac Shakur is at the peak of his powers, delivering a raw mixture of gangster rap, poetry, and social commentary. Angering politicians, dominating the charts, and even dating the Queen of Pop, Tupac had catapulted himself from the violent streets of South Central LA to stratospheric global fame. But just after 11 p.m, Tupac will be shot by an unknown gunman. Nearly 3 decades later, his death is still being investigated by the police. Did Tupac's controversial gangster image ultimately cost him his life? Now, in a groundbreaking world first, the case is going to be solved by me. Maybe. With the help of forensic psychologist Dr. Julia Shaw, I, Ramesh Ranganathan, a comedian with admittedly no experience of criminal investigations whatsoever, will try and solve the mystery once and for all. The Misinvestigations of Ramesh Ranganathan. Thank you so much for listening to For the Love of Hip Hop. I hope you enjoyed the show. Next episode, we're going to be talking about the greatest diss songs of all time. My personal opinion, Ice Cube's No Vaseline. This has been For the Love of Hip Hop. Bye.
So, we're looking into Tupac Shakur, but how long have you been into hip hop?
I've been into hip hop since I was 11 years old, so 34 years basically. It is a music and culture that I am completely and utterly in love with. I feel like I live and breathe, like I love it so much.
Tell us about Tupac Shakur.
He was the West Coast's kind of favourite son, if you like, in the 90s. He made lots of really impactful music really, really quickly. And Tupac did songs about the plight of the black community in America, about social issues, about single mothers, about how drugs had infiltrated black communities, you know, genuine proper reflections and kind of poetic laments about the state of the world. Well, I mean, I think it's clear that Tupac wanted to use his voice and his platform to make a difference.
Every time I speak, I want the truth to come out. You know what I'm saying? Every time I speak, I want to shiver. You know, I don't want them to be like, they know what I'm going to say because it's polite. They know what I'm going to say. And even if I get in trouble, you know what I'm saying? Ain't that what we're supposed to do? I'm not saying I'm going to rule the world or I'm going to change the world, but I guarantee that I will spark the brain that will change the world, and that's our job.
At the time of Tupac's death, he was a superstar. And for a generation of hip-hop fans, that was the first loss of, like, a really big star. Everybody was talking about it. This is a shooting of a megastar that happened in the 90s that we don't know the true story of. I mean, it's incredible when you think about it. Do I think that the misinvestigations of Ramesh Ranganathan is going to solve something that has remained unsolved by people that dedicated themselves to it? No, I don't. But I'd love to get a bit of insight into how it came about and what were the circumstances leading up to his death, because that's something that feels pretty murky to me.
So you don't think we've got a chance of solving it?
Look, there's always a chance.
You just do one more as a clean take, we're going to solve the case of Tupac Shakur.
We are going to try to solve the case of the murder of Tupac Shakur.
Once more, without the trial.
We're going to solve the murder of Tupac Shakur.
Fantastic. Cut.
We're not, though.
Cut.
But we aren't.
Cut there.
We are not going to solve it. My investigation began at exactly 9:23 in London's Embankment, where I met Dr. Julia Shaw. Hi, Julia.
Hey.
The criminal psychologist who had agreed to solve the case on my behalf and let me take the credit. Tupac Shakur.
Mm-hmm.
Excited about that?
I am. What do you know about him?
Well, you listen, I've come into this with a lot of preconceptions. I'm so loaded with preconceptions.
Very good.
My pockets are full of them.
So just tunnel vision going in.
100%.
Confirmation bias.
Completely closed-minded.
Ignoring all exculpatory evidence.
Just looking for confirmation of what I already know.
Excellent.
That's how I'm going into this.
I have no idea what happened, except I know that there's 3 theories. One is that it's an East Coast, West Coast thing. 2 is that it's an LA gangs thing, so he had some sort of gang involvement. And 3rd, it's that his manager had something to do with it.
Yeah, head of Death Row Records, Suge Knight, quite a shady character. I'm just saying that in the hope that he doesn't get released from prison and watch this. But I'm going into it with an open mind.
Okay.
Where do you think we should start?
Well, he got shot in Vegas, so probably Vegas.
Let's go.
Yeah? So, right now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Fine. We're going to have to book flights and stuff, Jim. I'll sort that out, though.
Sounds good.
26 years, 7 months and 14 days, 23 hours and 22 minutes after Tupac's murder, Julia and I touched down in Las Vegas, planning to visit the scene of the crime and retrace his movements on that fateful night.
Take a left at the next light, so get into the left lane. Oh, far left.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Right,
just to the right, you've got a little space on the side. It's rerouting us.
Our first stop was the MGM Grand Casino. That night, the world's media had descended on Las Vegas to cover a world heavyweight title bout. With Tupac and his manager Suge Knight ringside, Mike Tyson retained his belt in little over a minute. As the crowd filed out, Tupac became embroiled in a fight.
Between 8:30 and 9 at night, Tupac, Suge, and his bodyguards are involved in a physical altercation with someone who's later identified as Orlando Anderson of Compton, California. And it's caught on CCTV.
Yeah, I've seen this footage. It's just a horrible brawl.
So after the fight, Tupac goes back to this hotel, the Luxor, to change. Shortly after 10:30, they leave the Luxor in convoy and Suge's driving, and Tupac is next to him. So at 11, on Las Vegas Boulevard, Suge and Tupac were pulled over by police.
What were they pulled over for?
They were pulled over because Suge had his music on too loud. And so he's not cited at this point, and he's released a few minutes later. After the police let them go, they're back on the road, and someone snaps the last ever photo taken of Tupac. It has this fatalistic quality about it. What would you want your last image to be?
In the bar, eating.
Because?
I just think it gives an image I don't give a fuck. Doesn't matter, it doesn't have to be breakfast, could be lunch or dinner. Or even like a brunch.
Nice. They turn off of the street right onto Flamingo. So it's at the next set of lights where he stops.
Is it weird? I feel nervous.
This is it. The car stops at this traffic light, and there's girls on their left.
Yeah.
They're going, Tupac, Tupac, and they recognize them. And they're looking over, they're distracted. A white Cadillac pulls up alongside, so on the right.
Right.
There's 4 men, 2 in the front, 2 in the back. And according to Tupac's bodyguard, Frank Alexander, the shooter was, in quotes, in the back seat. I saw the arm of the shooter come out. I saw the silhouette of him. He was a black person wearing a skull cap, a beanie cap. In total, 13 shots were fired at the car.
13 shots.
Tupac is bleeding. Suge is bleeding. Suge does a U-turn in the intersection. Down, back, towards the strip.
Holy shit.
Yeah. Tupac is shot 4 times in the chest, arm, hand, and right hip.
Just imagine, you've just been shot. You're still thinking you might get shot at again.
Yeah.
People are screaming. The adrenaline must have been absolutely insane.
They end up getting pulled over just a short distance from the MGM Grand, which is where they started the night.
Named after a Peruvian revolutionary, Tupac was born in New York City in 1971 to a pair of radical political activists. His mother, Afeni Shakur, spent time in prison as a prominent member of the Black Panthers. She moved the family around Harlem, staying in different shelters as she became addicted to crack cocaine during an endemic that swept through the city during the 70s and 80s. It was in this New York, during this period, that hip-hop first emerged, as the likes of DJ Kool Herc, Africa Bambaataa, and Grandmaster Flash pioneered a form of self-expression for young black New Yorkers.
Push me, cause I'm close to the edge.
It was an innovative new music that would shape the young Tupac, and a scene who would eventually come to dominate. After our evening retracing Tupac's steps on the night of his murder, Julia, the useful one, suggested we try and gather some contemporaneous accounts, a fancy way of saying people who were there. Danny Boy was a close friend of Tupac who sang on his records and was with him in Vegas at the time. So how did you come to know Tupac? How did you meet? How did it all start?
I signed my first record deal with Death Row Records at the age of 15 years old. And I was one of the artists there on the label.
What was Tupac like?
Brilliant. To see Pac from the time that he showed up to the studio, it was nothing like it. Because you couldn't outwrite him. You couldn't out-rap him. He's in the studio while you sleep, he's reading. And if you thought you were going to read, he's writing. I think the stuff that he rapped and the music that he conveyed, whether it was through a life experience or someone that he knew, you felt it. He was the Picasso of drawing a picture of what that song was supposed to look like. A song like Dear Mama, for somebody like me that lost my mother at a young age, or somebody that hear that song, I think everybody got a mama. And when you hear that song, it's like, man, you could feel the prophet in the room. You could feel the brilliancy in the room. That was the beginning of school for me.
Did he have that kind of star aura, or that aura about him all the time when you spent time with him?
Absolutely. He's a star. He was a star.
So were you in Vegas on the night of the shooting?
Yeah, I was there. On the night of the shooting, I was there. and Suge, Pac, and myself were usually in the same car. And I remember getting dressed. I come downstairs, and the valet guy said, Mr. Stewart, something's on the back of your pants. I looked down, and it was like red spots from the bottom of my pants leg all the way up to the back of my calf. It looked like I had stepped on a ketchup packet.
So were it not for that, you having that on your trousers, you would have been in that car?
I definitely would have been in the car. No doubt about it.
In the immediate aftermath of the shooting, Tupac Shakur was rushed to hospital, where over the next 6 days, medical staff would fight to save his life.
His mom and I, we all stood around the bed, and she said, sing something. And I was looking at Pocket. I started singing, and a tear was rolling out his eyes.
I was born by the river in the little tent. Oh, just like that river I've been running ever since. It's been a long time coming.
I was blessed to have access to go in the room where he was. I walked in, and the nurse that usually talked to us, she just came out the door, and she was, I'm sorry. Next thing you know, I kind of went on my knees, and security came in and took me out. And yeah, I passed away.
Shit. Sorry. While the world mourned the loss of one of its greatest musical talents, news outlets scrambled to uncover details of his murder. But it was a young local reporter, 23-year-old Kathy Scott, of the Las Vegas Sun, who was first on the scene. Hoping to invoke a tone of 30s cop noir, we met at a seedy roadside motel, a decision that Kathy found baffling.
Do you remember which one it is?
It's 6.
Hi.
Come on in. Hi.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Where would you like us to sit?
Just anywhere.
Thanks so much for speaking with us today.
Oh, you're welcome.
Tell me, how did you get informed that the shooting had taken place?
I lived about 8 miles from the Las Vegas Strip, and I got a call at 2 in the morning from somebody in homicide who said this big rapper by the name of Tupac Shakur, he couldn't pronounce his name, was shot. So I just rolled out of bed and went down to the Las Vegas Strip.
So can you walk us through, from the moment that you arrive on the crime scene, did you see the car?
Well, the car was still there. There was yellow tape around it, of course. There were forensic CSI guys still working the streets. I think I got an hour's sleep. Next morning, I hit the ground running. I was at the hospital. It was when Danny Boy cried that I knew Tupac was dead.
And you broke the story of the fact that he had passed away, right?
We broke it. We were the first to report it, the Las Vegas Sun. We'd only had the internet up for 2 weeks, 1996, and within a couple of hours, it shut down.
So it crashed the site?
We crashed the site. The reason I continued covering this story, it just didn't feel like a real investigation. When the MGM video came out, you can see Orlando on the side, and then you see them, kind of barreling over him. He gets beat up by all these people. A cop comes, security officer is there. They talk to Orlando Anderson, and they leave. The police said I had nothing to do with it. It was just a coincidence.
How helpful was Suge Knight in this investigation?
It was quite unhelpful. They interview him, and they don't get anything out of him. And that's it. Close the book. But, Suge later put out all kinds of conspiracy theories, trying to throw more out there. He didn't seem to want to solve the crime. He just wanted to sell records.
So we're just starting to look into all of this. So what do you think we should do next to further understand what happened?
Well, Orlando was from South Central, Compton. And Suge Knight was from South Central, Bloods and Crips. I would get to the streets of Compton and start knocking on some doors. But don't go at night.
After a turbulent childhood in 1988, Tupac's mother, Afeni, moved the family to Marin, California. A young Tupac had started to establish himself as a performer, appearing in Shakespeare plays and obsessively writing poetry.
Really, I just enjoy expressing myself. Anytime I can express myself, I can let some of the pain go from a childhood like mine.
That same year, West Coast hip-hop collective NWA released Straight Outta Compton, with its infamous second track, Fuck the Police, an angry reflection on the widespread violence they'd experienced on the streets of LA. In 1991, at the age of 20, Tupac was plucked from obscurity by the newly emerging label Interscope Records, releasing his first album, Tupacalypse Now, an explosive exploration of the black experience in America and seething against racial inequality and injustice. Trying to look cool, I used to drive to LA to play Julius some of Tupac's most iconic tracks.
I consider myself an unofficial ambassador for hip-hop, right? And I don't like people thinking it's just misogyny and guns and stuff like that. So that song, he's sort of talking about female empowerment, and he's talking about sisters on welfare and how he cares about them, and full disclosure, he also talks about bitches and stuff like that. Not in this song, but in other songs. So tell me, what's your current hip-hop state of play? How into it are you?
I like hip-hop. I mean, I definitely listen to Tupac and Biggie, but not contemporaneously. Like,
Yeah, honestly, listening to it contemporaneously is the best though. When I listened to it contemporaneously, I just felt like I was appreciating it in a way that people listen to it non-contemporaneously but they couldn't.
but like, you actually lived the release of these, right? Like, you remember
Yes,
these
correct.
tracks being
Yeah,
released.
totally. Just uncut contemporaneous.
Whereas I came to them much later, and so it was sort of already pre-filtered,
Yeah.
pre-death.
It was Arrhenius.
Is that it? Exactly.
California knows how to party. Sadly, we were in town to work. We sat down in a diner to figure out how to move the case forward. Here you go, Chris. Thank you very much. I'll be honest, I was bricking it about going to Compton. So I came up with a plan to divert Julie's attention and our investigation elsewhere. Lovely. Okay. I've got a theory. Don't want to discuss with you.
Go on.
Suge Knight orchestrated the shooting and killing of Tupac. Because, two possible reasons. One, Tupac wanted to leave death row, and so Suge Knight thought the only way you leave this record label is dead. Or he was due to pay him a load of royalties for the music. He didn't want to pay him, so he thought, kill him off. He gets to keep that money. And Tupac goes on to sell loads and loads of records posthumously.
Okay, so
Posthumously.
posthumously.
Tupac goes to sell a load more records posthumously.
So Suge, who was also in the car, you think orchestrated a hit that involved killing Tupac while he was in the car as well?
Why would you suspect somebody was in the car? Do you know what I mean? Do a shock face.
Did he get hit?
He got like a graze on the head, apparently.
But what if he died?
Then I would argue it's gone wrong. But the point is, you're questioning it because he was in the car. That's why it makes it perfect. I'll be in the car. Nobody will suspect me.
And do you have evidence to back any of this up so far?
No, I don't have any evidence, but it sort of adds up, doesn't it?
Amazing.
Plausible, right? So I thought we could investigate this. Just see, I don't want to just base it on hearsay. So we need to talk to somebody who was there on the night.
Yeah.
Responsible for security.
Very good.
I know who you're thinking I'm talking about.
Head of Death Row Security.
Reggie Wright. So we're going to chat to him and we're going to find out what he thinks about this Suge Knight theory. I'm going to be honest with you, I think it's got legs. Born and raised in Compton, Marion Suge Knight was a college football star who briefly played for the LA Rams before moving into music. A member of the Crips gang with a fearsome reputation, he was rumoured to have secured the royalties for the hit song Ice Ice Baby by dangling Vanilla Ice off a balcony. In 1991, he founded Death Row Records with Dr. Dre, quickly signing Snoop Dogg and building a company that was as successful as it was controversial, dominating the fledgling hip-hop scene, and by 1996, making over $100 million a year. Suge Knight is currently incarcerated in San Diego prison, jailed for 28 years, for deliberately reversing over and killing an adversary in Compton in 2015. Instead, we were hoping to get some insight from Reggie Wright Jr., an old school friend who was working as the head of Death Row Security on the night of Tupac's murder. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us. We are looking into the death of Tupac. So you were head of security at Death Row when Death Row was at its peak, right? What was it like working at Death Row Records during that time?
Oh, didn't realize what you was involved in. Do now, of course. Being able to go to Super Bowl and sit on the 50-yard line, hotels, award shows and stuff like that. That was the exciting part. Didn't realize the talent or
the real responsibility that you did have.
And so Suge Knight was your boss?
He was my boss, childhood friend, grew up together.
You mentioned Suge Knight's name in the UK and people have a reaction because of, his reputation is very intimidating, right? How close is that to the reality of, of working for him and being around him?
He played it. He played into it. He wants you to believe it. Everybody think because he got money and all of that, he became a bully. That's not true. Suge was always a jokester. He generally was a good guy. Can't think of any incidents where he was the initiator. Now, he may have been the initiator when he thought someone did him wrong or owe him some money or something like that. But just walking up and down the street and say, hey, like some guys do, just want to bully you because I wasn't sure.
Can you take us back to the night that Tupac died?
I remember it because I was mainly worrying about Club 662.
You're focusing on the club where he's headed, which makes sense.
Yeah.
He has this huge entourage, and that is a form of protection of itself.
Exactly.
Plus, does he have one of your guys there as well?
He didn't have a security guy assigned to him because I was usually always with him.
Did you feel that he had enough people around him already that you didn't need to be there?
Now, no. Even if my fat bud was there with him, who knows what would have happened, Firing back at the car and shooting at the car, maybe some old lady going in there playing penny slots.
And in terms of being able to change anything about the situation, you're saying it might not have actually changed anything, having known that had happened?
Correct. I mean, Tupac Shakur, Suge Knight, and they were going to let me treat him like Beyonce. Hey, sit in the middle of the seat. One security guard sit right here, one security guard right here, and get that armor car over here. They were not doing that in Vegas on no strip. We can all sit back and be like, oh, that's what I would have did. Yeah, that's where I get mad or disappointed. I'll be like, people want to put Tupac Shakur in 1996, September the 7th, thug life written across the chest. You're going to let me, yeah, okay. Put this bulletproof vest on at 110 degrees weather in Vegas on a hot summer day. Okay, yeah, Reggie, sure. Bye.
In the years immediately following the murder, rumours would swirl about the shooter's motivation. One widely discredited theory even pointed the finger at Reggie, purportedly acting as an accomplice to Suge's wife in a failed hit on Suge himself. I was obviously too shit scared to ask him about that, but I was brave enough to ask about Suge. So, Reggie, one of the reasons we wanted to look into this, the whole Tupac case, is because there's so many different theories about what actually happened. So theory one is Suge Knight orchestrated the hit on Tupac because Tupac wanted to leave death row, or because Suge Knight was going to have to pay out royalties and he didn't want to pay out that money, so he wanted to make a saving, if you like, by getting rid of Tupac.
To even entertain that for me is just idiotic. For those that believe it, you believe that, that's what you are. I bet you.
Okay, so we can strike that one off. It was dark outside, so I thought twice about a to Compton, and instead suggested Julia and I hop on a plane to look for new leads in the city of Tupac's birth, New York. Suge might not have ordered the hit, but he did help stoke the flames of a rivalry that would catapult hip-hop into the global limelight. A rivalry leaving a trail of bodies in its wake. East Coast versus West. Suge Knight versus Sean Puffy Combs. Tupac versus Biggie. Tupac's first album sold 500,000 copies, whilst Vice President Dan Quayle declared it had no place in our society. His second album, you can Google the name of it, was released in 1993, propelling the enigmatic trailblazer into an international superstar, bringing with it chart success and even a relationship with the Queen of Pop herself, Madonna. But it was all completely at odds with his increasing involvement in gang life, bouncing from one altercation to the next, carrying a gun and being arrested for a litany of offences across the country. A trail of violence and destruction that culminated in December 1993, when he faced trial for the sexual assault of a 19-year-old woman. Whilst the jury were deliberating the verdict in his case, in an extraordinary coincidence, an attempt was made on Tupac's life outside New York's Quad Studios.
So this is where he got shot, right?
Yeah. I can't believe this is where it happened. I think he got shot, as he was going into an elevator.
One of these.
Yeah. On the 30th of November 1994, Tupac was ambushed and shot 5 times in the lobby of this recording studio. Although later discovered to be the result of a robbery, Tupac became convinced that the attack was orchestrated by Bad Boy Records boss Sean Puffy Coombs and his star signing, Biggie Smalls. So he was supposed to be coming here to lay some vocals down.
Right.
And because Biggie and Puff are both here.
Recording upstairs, right?
Yeah. Tupac left this incident believing that they must have had something to do with it. I mean, there's actually a photo of him being taken to the ambulance and him just doing that. If you see that photo, knowing the context of it afterwards, you sort of think this is a guy that's immediately put 2 and 2 together. Just like, fuck you. Just 1 day after the shooting at Quad Studios, against medical advice, Tupac checked himself out of hospital. The jury in this sexual assault trial had reached a verdict. He was found guilty on a lesser charge of sexual abuse and set a $3 million bail fee while he awaited sentencing. Broke, thanks to both his extravagant spending and defence of multiple court cases, Tupac had no choice but to submit to jail time. The shooting had reignited a feud that some argue ultimately cost both Tupac and Biggie their lives. We'd arranged to meet with Dan Charnas, former record company owner and hip-hop journalist. Hi Dan, Rob.
Nice to meet you.
How's it going? Nice to meet you, man. Is it okay to have a look around, do you think?
I'm sure they wouldn't mind.
Cool. We were hoping Dan could deepen our understanding of the East Coast-West Coast rivalry, Biggie versus Tupac, and its potential impact on the Tupac case. Hey man, what's going on? Just having a look around. I can't believe I'm here. The whole Tupac Biggie thing all came from here. Can I touch anything? Not everything.
Rob?
It's like Narnia. You don't actually existing, but I am at the Quad Studios. It's incredible. Oh my god. So I grew up as an East Coast hip hop fan who also listened to West Coast hip hop, but I was very much, to be honest, I was very much Biggie. Technically, I don't feel there's a debate. You know, Biggie was an incredible rapper. Tupac, he could rap, but you weren't ever marvelling at his lyrical dexterity or anything like that. So in your opinion, what is it about Tupac that pushed him above and beyond that?
First of all, empathy. I think that when Pac wrote, people felt what he wrote. And yeah, we can say Biggie is a more dexterous MC, but being a dexterous MC doesn't mean you're a great songwriter and that people feel what you are saying, right? Pac, I think, was writing about things that were less fantasy and more reality for him. I think you could tell through his lyrics that he worried deeply about people, and I think folks really felt that.
Biggie was East Coast. Tupac was West Coast. Tell me about the East Coast-West Coast rivalry.
Well, I think it goes back a lot further than Biggie and Tupac. Hip-hop indisputably began in New York, and it began to spread across the country. One of the places that it spread to was Los Angeles, which developed its own take on hip-hop. But I think that there were a lot of folks in New York who felt that LA was a little behind the times, a little passé, when New York had moved on to sampling breakbeats and you know, the Marley Marl stuff and the DJ Premier stuff.
Who are these
LA
people?
seemed...
Oh, they like hip-hop super producers.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when New York moved on to a lot of digitally sampled stuff, LA was still doing stuff with drum machines. It seemed like there was a creative disconnect between LA and New York, and I think this frustrated a lot of artists who were coming in from Los Angeles. They felt that they couldn't get respect from DJs in New York, from fans in New York. So there was already resentment from the West Coast to the East Coast. For the most part, the creative differences had disappeared by the 1990s. It was Suge Knight sort of stoking this rivalry between two record companies. That's what the East Coast, West Coast thing became. It's this idiot over here yelling at this idiot over here, and people getting in their feelings about it.
Now, we're at the studios where Tupac got shot, right?
Yeah.
Do you feel that was a trigger point for a lot of stuff?
I think that this is where the stakes got higher and the gossip got bigger and the gossip overtook everything else.
With Tupac languishing in jail, Puffy and Biggie released Who Shot Ya? While the true meaning behind the track remains hotly debated, Tupac took it as a direct diss record, an admittance of involvement in the shooting.
Who shot ya? Separate the weak from the opposite. Leap hard to creep the Brooklyn streets.
In your opinion, was Who Shot Ya a diss record?
Only Biggie knows. For real.
In the increasingly volatile war of words, Suge hit back with a now infamous appearance at the 1995 Source Awards, publicly calling out Puffy with accusations of narcissism.
Anyone that's out there want to be an artist and want to stay a star, and don't have to worry about the Jada producer trying to be all in the video, all on the record. Yeah, come to Death Row.
What an award show is a stage, and what Suge Knight wanted to do on that stage was to ignite something, to create a little controversy, and he did.
And doing it for corporate reasons rather than personal beef.
I think a lot of it's ego. I think that Suge Knight was an opportunist who would take advantage of anything he could to accumulate power. If all of this leads to death, how great a business person are you to stoke the flames of this rivalry?
As Suge and Puffy ratcheted up controversy with a spectre of violence, Tupac would spend the next 9 months of his life behind bars.
Shit.
Perfect. You said you wanted to chat.
Yeah. Well, I'm slightly conflicted about whether it's okay to like Tupac, basically, because the fact is, he was convicted. He was obviously a troubled character, and so it's like a question of separating the art from the artist. Are you allowed to like Tupac? Should we even be making this show?
It's a good question that we should be asking all the time, right? I think we need to be careful not to see him as sort of the hero he wasn't. We shouldn't make him this larger-than-life character who just singing about it and would never engage in this kind of stuff, because we know he was capable of violence.
Okay.
We've seen it. We've seen footage.
I won't listen to Michael Jackson anymore.
Yeah.
You feel conflicted. If the music's crap, it's a very easy decision to make, right? But if you really like an artist and you've bought into what they're about, and then they do something that you don't agree with,
Yeah.
can you, in good conscience, continue listening to that artist?
Yeah.
Do you know the honest truth? When you really like somebody, you want to believe they're innocent of the thing that they've been accused of, right?
Yeah. It's basically having a parasocial relationship. So a parasocial relationship is when you feel like you know someone so well, like they're a friend of yours. And with our favorite artists, we very much feel like we know them, right? And the people we know, we assume couldn't be capable of doing terrible things. And so we just say, either he was framed, it was a lie, it wasn't so bad, whatever excuse we make.
You have to make your own personal judgment based on your own moral compass, I guess.
Well, I mean, some people won't listen to music because they're swearing in it.
Yeah, sure.
So, I mean, that's obviously a huge difference for everyone anyway.
Yeah. I've got a good feeling about this. Basically, the way I visualise it, that hoop's massive, it's enormous. All I see is hoop. That sounds disgusting, but...
I'd cancel you for that lyric.
Nothing but that! Okay. Don't worry, they'll edit that too, so it looked like it went in.
In his New York prison cell, Tupac became ever more paranoid, heavily in debt, and was now convinced Biggie and Puffy were out to kill him. On the 16th of September, 1995, Suge Knight arrived at the prison armed with a solution. A contract, written on a napkin, that offered Tupac a multi-million-dollar 3-album deal. In exchange, his company, Death Row Records, would post a $1.4 million bond, pending appeal to get him out of jail. We arrived back in California, still no clear as to who pulled the trigger that killed Tupac and why. It was broad daylight, so I knew I had to be fearless and do something really, really dangerous. I opted not to tell Julia. She'd only tried to convince me not to.
Hey, I'm Ron, here for the LA Hood Life tour.
Well, this is the right place.
I was going deep undercover in Compton.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Infiltrating the heart of LA gang culture on a tour group led by Compton local Big Mike.
So Big Mike, do I call you Big Mike?
I go by many names.
Okay. Does anyone call you Mike?
Yeah.
For just $160, me and a man called Nick will be taken on a daring drive through some of Los Angeles' most infamous hip-hop hotspots. A mission I hope would shed light on the role of my next suspect, Orlando Anderson.
This is where Biggie got gunned down, right here in front of the Peterson's Auto Museum. He was just getting in his car, and then somebody just pulled up side and gunned him down. It was like a drive-by. Yeah, this is 8200. This is Death Row Records. This was the headquarters.
Wow. So did you work at Death Row Records?
Yes, I worked at Death Row.
What did you do?
Security.
Oh, okay.
I work with everybody on death row, from Dr. Dre to Tupac. I always tell people if Suge Knight would have only ran death row as a business, then he would still be in business. But there was a lot of things going on that was not about the music industry, and I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Can we allude to it? No.
Can we go to Compton now?
Let's go now. Let's do it. That's my city.
We're going to Compton.
This street right here, this is Compton Boulevard. This is the main street coming through the city of Compton.
Compton in south central Los Angeles is one of the most notorious districts in America. The place where the Blood and Crips gangs emerged in the 1970s, sparking a vicious drugs war that would see the area dubbed the murder capital of the United States. In 1992, the LA riots swept through this neighborhood following the murder of Rodney King, a response to the LAPD's history of racism towards the city's black population. It was from these streets artists like Dr. Dre, Ice Cube, and Snoop Dogg were pioneering the gangster rap that Tupac would come to epitomize, propelling West Coast hip-hop onto the world stage.
This is Tam's Hamburger Stand. It was right here in the drive-thru is where Suge Knight ran over and killed Terry Carter. That's why Suge Knight is in jail. You see these murals over here on this side?
Yeah.
You got Dr. Dre, Eazy-E, DJ Quick, and Kendrick Lamar. This was the OG Mom's Burgers from back in the days.
The tour was fascinating, but largely irrelevant to the case. Nervous about my lack of progress, I decided to grill Big Mike clues.
I've just sort of started looking into the whole Tupac shooting, and Orlando Anderson's name came up straight away.
I've known Orlando since he was a kid.
Really?
Yes. Orlando's grandfather was my Little League baseball coach when I was 12 years old.
And how did Orlando get involved with Tupac? Like, what was the story there?
Orlando was a Tupac fan.
Right.
He told me all he wanted was an autograph. And Tupac was going to give him that autograph.
Is this at the...
This is not in Las Vegas.
Oh,
this
okay.
is right here in L.A. This is at the Lakewood Mall.
Okay.
In Long Beach.
Right.
And Tupac was with some Bloods. And my neighborhood is Crips. And they start telling Tupac, no, don't give him no autograph. We don't even like that fool. Blah, blah this, blah, blah that. One thing led to another, and they started fighting. To make a long story short, they run into each other again a couple of months later in Las Vegas. And you probably seen Tupac theme when Suge was jumping on somebody in the lobby of the MGM after the Mike Tyson fight. That was Orlando. Orlando's uncle, Keefy D, is one of the biggest drug dealers in Compton. It's not like you're just gonna let somebody just stomp his nephew out and we just gonna let it go. And so for the next 2 hours, they're riding around and they're looking for Suge and Tupac. And they pull up on the side of his car and they gunned him down. End of story.
How do you know that's the truth?
2 days after Orlando shot and killed Tupac, Orlando Anderson was in my house. Him and my younger brother are best friends. And that's when he told my brother that he killed Tupac. I only had one question for Orlando. Why? He just wanted the autograph.
So what happened to Orlando?
Orlando Anderson died right here. This used to be the Compton Car Wash.
Right. That was completely unrelated.
Yeah, some people had got some dope from Orlando. They owed him some money, and they didn't want to pay.
Big Mike's store finished at his gift shop. I didn't really need anything, but...
You got hoodies, you got joggers, you got jackets.
Do you have anything like this is like fuck the police or anything like that?
No, I have like shirts like this that say straight out of Compton. It has every Compton street on it. Along this wall right here, you got all the different designs on the baseball caps. They got all women's shirts along this wall right here. And then these are unisex, going from small, medium, large, extra large, double XL.
As a hip-hop fan, what an incredible tool. Big Mike is the real deal. You know, he's one of the original members of the Crips, worked at Death Row Records, ticks all the boxes. Bearing in mind the whole premise of this show is that I'm the idiot, and Julie the expert takes me around and tells me here to interrogate people. I've gone and solved the case on my own, so a little bit embarrassing for her, I would say. But I'm looking forward to telling her that I know who killed Tupac. It was Orlando Anderson. Let's pack up and go home.
So I've been looking into who we can speak to next, and I think that we need to go
Cool
to...
story, but can I just stop you 1 second? I don't know how else to say this. I've cracked the case.
Because
I have solved the case.
How did you solve the case?
Well, I was supposed to research LA gangs.
Right.
There's a way of doing that. You can either sort of hit the streets of Compton and see what's going on, or you can take a novelty bus tour. And I did the second one.
And you cracked the case because you took a novelty bus tour.
Correct. I spent some time with Big Mike. It turns out, a few days after Tupac got shot, Orlando Anderson turned up to his house and said, I shot Tupac. So, case closed.
And how have you come to this conclusion? What's your evidence? I presume you got that on the tour.
Yeah, I bought a Compton mug and a full tracksuit and a hat. But
Did Big Mike encourage you to buy those things?
he didn't encourage me, but he was stood over me while I was looking through the stuff. So yes, I felt a pressure. But Big Mike told me that Orlando Anderson went to his house, not any Orlando Anderson, the Orlando Anderson that was seen in the MGM security footage having a fight with Tupac.
And so the only evidence you have is this bus tour.
If you say bus tour, yeah, obviously that cheapens it. But on the bus tour, I spoke to Big Mike, and Big Mike heard it directly from Orlando Anderson's mouth.
Does he have any evidence that this actually happened?
Yeah, his infallible memory and recollection of the event.
And when does he say that Orlando... Even the fact that I'm saying, when does he say that he said it? You see the problem there,
Yeah,
right?
you don't understand. I understand the problem. What I'm telling you is Big Mike told me Orlando Anderson said he shot Tupac.
Sure.
Yeah, sure. According to Julia, we did some hard evidence. And whilst I'd been risking my life on Big Mike's tour, she had made a phone call and set up a meet. In 2006, the LAPD reopened another unsolved murder. Just 6 months after his own death, Tupac's East Coast rival Biggie Smalls was gunned down in Los Angeles. Facing allegations that corrupt police were involved, the LAPD launched a task force to reinvestigate the case. It was headed by former cop Greg Cady.
So you were involved in the investigation of the Biggie case, right?
Correct. The LAPD was trying to figure out exactly what happened, but they wanted to have a new team of investigators look into it because the case had gotten cold. It was stagnant. As we began to delve into Biggie's investigation, we started to get information about Tupac's murder.
So, in the process of investigating the Biggie case, you sort of realised that you can make some progress in the Tupac case.
That's exactly right. We got a confession in Biggie's murder, and then coincidentally, we also got a confession in Tupac's murder.
So you got an actual confession in the Tupac case?
Correct. We interviewed one of the co-conspirators who confessed to his involvement, and he also identified the other co-conspirators.
And who was this person?
The individual that we interviewed that confessed, his name was Keith Davis. They call him Keefy D. He was a Crip gang member. He happened to be the uncle of the individual that Tupac had gotten into a fight with at the MGM.
Orlando Anderson, right?
Correct. Keefy D was the brother of Orlando Anderson's mother. So yeah, there's a direct relationship between the two.
So time frame wise, when did you speak to Keefy D?
We spoke with him late 2008 into early 2009. We had worked out an arrangement, what are known as proffer sessions. If he divulges things that are self-incriminating, that you would not use those against him. And so this gives them the confidence to know that they're not talking themselves into jail.
Right. So Orlando Anderson was dead at this time, right?
Yeah, that's right. He was shot and killed back in 1998. I don't know if maybe that made it a little bit easier for his uncle to discuss his role in the murder.
Did you interview him?
I did. I interviewed him. We spoke about his involvement potentially in Biggie's murder. He denied any involvement. He admitted that he'd been there that night, and then he says, I don't know anything about that one, but the one I do know about is gonna blow your mind.
And he said that?
This is his quote. He says, it's gonna blow your motherfucking mind. So great, blow our minds.
Okay, and do you have the interviews?
Yeah, I have the full confession. We recorded the entire interview. All right.
Quite nervous, weirdly.
We went up to the 626. Well, we waited about 15, 20 minutes. They didn't show up. So it's like, let's go get some liquor. We stopped at the liquor store. I got out my van. Cadillacs and jumped in the Cadillac.
Okay, so Lane in Cadillac with T. Brown and Dre.
Yeah.
On the tape, Keefe D identifies 3 fellow Crip gang members in the Cadillac with him. Driver Terrence Brown, Dre Smith, and his nephew, Orlando Anderson.
And so Lane is Orlando?
Correct. He went by a couple of names. They called him Lane or Baby Lane.
We came up Harmon at the Las Vegas Boulevard, and shit, here they coming at BMW and Bros. Tupac. And we like, there you go. We had the U-turn, and they was in a little lane. We just pulled up on the side.
So what directed your attention to him was some girl shouting at Tupac?
Tupac! He gave himself away. Otherwise, they would have got away.
So you guys pull up alongside. This is essentially what you see.
Yeah.
What's taking place here, we're showing Keefe D a photograph. It's considered the last photograph of Tupac ever taken. He's essentially saying, yeah, that's what we saw. So you hand the gun to the backseat.
Yeah.
You can hear Lane.
I gave it to Dre, and Dre was like, no.
So he wants to give the gun to Dre because Dre's actually the nearest. And so because Dre's like, I don't want to do that, Orlando ends up shooting him from the other side, is that right?
That's right. Orlando would have kind of been leaning over the top of Dre.
I gave it to Dre, and Dre was like, no. And Lane's like, yeah, pop.
It's like, the way he's talking about the whole thing, it's super casual, the way he's describing everything that's happened.
Yeah, his ability to comprehend the fact that they stole a human life, it doesn't even really resonate with him.
And Keefe D, did he say that they were doing that purely because of the fight at MGM? Was that the sole motivation for them going out and looking for him to do it?
It's not the only reason. They took advantage of the fight with Orlando Anderson to take care of something that they had already agreed to do beforehand.
What did
they had agreed to do?
What did they agree to do?
So prior to this, because of all the conflict that had occurred between Biggie and Tupac, all of that had been leading up to this increasingly hostile conflict. And so Puffy, aware of that, is like, man, I've got a target on my back when I come to LA. And so he has a conversation with Keefe D and says, listen, I need to take care of these guys because I don't want to come to LA and have to worry about being killed. What made it a specific, like, hey, I'm serious, I want you guys to kill these guys? How's the conversation go? I mean, okay, listen, I'll do it, but I need $500,000, or, I mean, we need really specific details regarding that.
Yeah, we want $1 million.
So he tells you seriously, man, I need to get rid of these guys, and he's looking at you in the eyes, and he's like scared.
Yeah.
And who's he? Wait, Puff said.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you believe that conversation happened?
I absolutely do.
Okay.
He is in a situation where if he is not telling the truth, and we can prove that, then all bets are off the table and he goes to prison for 25 plus years.
Does anything happen to Puffy after that?
We already knew Puffy was unapproachable. His lawyers were going to stand in front of him and prevent him from, potentially incriminating himself. So we knew that we weren't going to be able to corroborate any of this with Puffy. Orlando's dead. Dre's dead. Terrence Brown, he's shot and killed. And so now it's not about what you know, it's about what you can prove. And I don't think we'd be able to prove this in a court of law.
So Kading believes Keefe D, but his evidence hasn't been challenged. And Kading says police didn't even try and interview Puffy. So it doesn't seem to me that they actually took the allegation that seriously.
I hope you guys got some answers.
We did, we got all the answers. We should have started with you.
Nice to meet you.
You're so welcome.
In 2016, Puffy refuted these allegations, saying we don't talk about things that are nonsense. I put these claims to him again, but got no reply. And that would have been that, except that just a few months after we got back from filming, the Las Vegas police unexpectedly ended a near 3-decade wait by arresting somebody for the killing of Tupac Shakur. Calmly surrendering to police, Keefe D faces charges of murder with a deadly weapon in his role of shot caller that night. He will stand trial later this year, where prosecutors will argue that by publicly admitting in TV interviews and in his book that he'd lied to police, he broke the terms of his proffer deal, and his taped confessions are now admissible. He has pleaded not guilty. It had taken the professionals in the LVPD 27 years and 22 days to arrive at the same conclusion I'd reached in just under a week. I came into this whole process as an East Coast hip-hop fan, and although I respected Tupac's work and I was aware of how big an impact he had, I wasn't really sure of why, and I think
what this process has shown me is I sort of feel like I get him a bit more. Like, I understand why he was such a big deal to so many people. I mean, he's a very intelligent guy. There are songs about the plight of single mothers. There are songs about the struggle for the black community in America. There are songs about the effect of drugs on the community. Kind of what made him such a special artist is that you have kind of rappers that deal with the social commentary and you have rappers that deal with the more kind of visceral side of hip-hop. And I think he was one of those rare artists, if not unique, in terms of somebody that could do both of those things. For all of the kind of eulogising about Tupac's rap career, we are talking about a young man who was taken way too soon. And there is a course of a few days that are kind of pivotal for Tupac, in terms of there's a shooting at the studio. A few days later is his trial for assault. He goes to prison. You know, from talking to people, he became intensely paranoid. He became convinced that people were out to get him and has no money. And Suge Knight turns up and solves both those problems for him. Gets him out of prison, signs him to Death Row Records, and suddenly he's making money and is a huge rap star. Whether you think it was an East Coast, West Coast hip-hop thing, or whether you think it was a gang thing that he got caught up in, both of those theories are kind of consistent with the idea that he went to the West Coast, he saw Suge Knight as his saviour, and he threw himself into West Coast life and the gangster rap lifestyle as much as he possibly could. And the problem with that is, if you throw yourself into something like that, chances are you're going to get your fingers burnt, and that's what happened to Tupac.
phiền muộn cho đời mãi chẳng thành về chìm dưới gian nan về ngồi dưới cơn mưa về làm gió mong manh.
The police are meant to protect us from the worst of society. We trust them to uphold the law and keep us safe. But what happens when the protector becomes the predator?
He's performing as the protector of the public. On the other hand, he's actually a really dark monster.
Is that how you obtain this material? And the people who are meant to keep us safe become dangerous.
I'll arrest on suspicion of attempted murder.
Even though you're a police officer, people will feel that they're above the law.
But how would you catch a criminal who thinks like a cop?
He's got a head start on the investigation team.
He's panicking at this point, and he's now running.
I've enlisted the help of 3 experts. 2 senior officers that have put hundreds of offenders behind bars.
Most people, they know when their back's against the wall and they're going to get convicted for something.
The horror, he's one of us.
And a leading psychologist who can analyse the criminal mind.
Underlying that anger is the need to dominate, is the need to control.
In this series, I'll discover cops who put themselves on the wrong side of the law.
He's like a Jekyll and Hyde character.
Abuse their power and commit horrific crimes.
We should never have had that badge. Ever.
When a senior police officer abuses their power to violate and humiliate their victims in the worst way imaginable, you've got to ask yourself, how was they ever fit to wear the uniform? Over more than a decade, Western Australia cop Adrian Trevor Moore committed some of the most sadistic crimes in the force's history.
Adrian Moore drugged and raped more than a dozen women he met online. In a case so vulgar, the jury needed counselling.
The vile acts he carried out shook the community and eroded their trust in the police to protect them. The story first came to light 6 years earlier.
It's January 2018 when a serving police officer contacts the Internal Affairs and complains of inappropriate behavior by Moore.
Police seize Moore's computer, and detectives uncover evidence suggesting he might have been using the police database to target women.
The police database is there for you as a police officer conducting inquiries, and therefore there's an awful lot of sensitive information is held within that, and that brought about an investigation.
If true, Moore's actions were a total abuse of trust, but Internal Affairs needed proof. To help me understand how to go about catching a cop, I'm turning to former Detective Chief Inspector Howard Groves.
How did they go about investigating this? They decided to set up a sting in the hope that Adrian Moore would actually go onto the police system and actually look into it.
This would be the beginning of a case that would shock and sicken the people of Australia.
I reported on Adrian Trevor Moore's case for Channel 7 News here in Perth. So yes, Internal Affairs officers, they created a fake dating profile. This named Sally Fields.
Wait, so they set up a fake profile to snare him, to catch him in the act?
That was to try and essentially trick him, into thinking that this was a real woman that he'd be interested in. And he fell right into their plan.
Moore continued to comb through the police database, identifying women classified as vulnerable, either witnesses or victims of previous crimes. Straight away, that sounds like an abuse of his position.
It is an extreme abuse of power, looking up extremely sensitive information, like home addresses, date of births, phone numbers. There's a plethora of information, and he completely stole that trust from his victims.
As part of their investigation, police raided Moore's home and confiscated his electronic devices, including computer hard drives. What happens next?
police actually uncovered hundreds and thousands of recordings. And what they found on these recordings was absolutely horrific. They found sexually explicit conduct on these hard drives, thousands of videos, thousands of images. Adrian Moore had been misusing police databases to vet something like 90 women over more than a decade, and he'd been doing this since 2006.
The sting was a success. Moore was arrested. Internal Affairs exposed his misuse of the database to vet potential partners and revealed a huge collection of hardcore pornography and recordings of his sexual partners. How many images are we talking?
They found thousands of images of women. These images depicted sexual acts being committed against these women. Some of these images were quite extreme, but also they found images of bestiality, and that was a much more alarming and of concern to the officers in terms of the investigation.
In court, Moore was found guilty of misusing the police database and for being in possession of bestiality porn. In February 2019, he was sentenced.
His sentence was 6 months and a day imprisonment. He received a fine of $2,000 for the bestiality porn that was found on his computer.
The explicit images were dismissed as consensual. What the police hadn't yet uncovered was the full extent of Moore's horrific acts. For now, he sat quietly serving his time without raising suspicion.
I can imagine he's thinking, hey, I've got away with it. They haven't uncovered the full extent of what I've done, but sitting at home watching this all play out was Nicole Edwards.
Moore's police colleague, Nicole Edwards, had a story that will blow the lid off this case.
I remember being struck across the face while sitting on the couch. My head hit the back wall, and I remember thinking, I'm in trouble here.
In February 2019, Western Australian police officer Adrian Trevor Moore was sentenced to 6 months in prison for misusing police systems to look up vulnerable women. We know Moore abused his access to the police database, and he had a taste for extreme pornography. That in itself is a massive breach of trust. But it makes me think, if he's capable of that, what else has he been up to? During the investigation, police seized Moore's computer hard drives, uncovering thousands of explicit videos he claimed were consensual. But one person knew better. Fellow officer Nicole Edwards. Outraged that the police went after Moore just for the computer misuse charges, Nicole stepped forward and reported to her police superiors that in 2017, she had been raped by Moore.
Nicole Edwards, she was a survivor, and she is obviously at home thinking to herself, hang on, someone just got a slap on the wrist for misuse of police computer, when in fact this man is a monster.
To help me understand what Nicole would have gone through, I'm meeting psychologist Serena Simmons. So how did Nicole actually meet Adrian Moore?
So Nicole met Moore in 2017, and she met him on a dating site. So the fact that she found him on a dating site gave it a sense of safety, because it was something that was used by many, many people. He was another police officer, so as someone who was a police officer herself, knowing that someone was also a police officer, I think, gave her a sense that there was someone with shared value. This is someone that is like me, they understand the job, they had something already in common.
Nicole went on a first date with Moore. The pair met in a public place and they hit it off.
And from there, she interacted with him for a short while, felt so comfortable that she invited him to dinner at her home. Said that he was actually really quite charming, very, very nice, and she felt really, really comfortable with him, which shows how good he is at putting that out on straight away. So he's able to lure someone in, make it all seem very, very normal, very run-of-the-mill. And then this is where he begins to change.
In a 2023 interview, Nicole opened up about what happened on that second date, when Moore came to her home for dinner.
I remember him handing me a glass of red wine, and he said, drink it and hurry up. going to pull you another one. And I remember having a mouthful of it, and then after that, I just start to feel strange.
What Nicole didn't realise was Moore had spiked her wine with an unknown drug.
There was a lot of blanks, so I remember being struck across the face while sitting on the couch. My head hit the back wall, and I remember thinking, I'm in trouble here.
Can you just pause that a second? He's drugged her. Why is he then punching her and beating her up? And is this what he wants? He just wants to... I don't understand what he's getting from that.
Remember, so he's drugged her, he has control. He wants to cause her pain and suffering, so he hits her and beats her and tortures her. He then proceeds to rape her. He does incredibly degrading things to her to completely have complete control over her. And all the while he's getting sexual gratification out of it.
I just find it unbelievable and difficult to even comprehend the mindset of somebody who not only does that, but enjoys it, gets sexual gratification from that.
And then I remember he grabbed me by the hair, pulled me across the floor, and put his penis inside my mouth and smashed my head down. And I remember thinking, I am going to die, I cannot breathe. As he's then urinated in my mouth and I am choking. And they're the two parts that I remember.
Oh no. Oh, I have to stop it a sec.
He's also taken time to step out of it for a second and set up a camera so that he can actually video everything. Remember, he wants to go back over this and relive the events of the evening. So, utterly enjoying what he's doing in the moment, but knowing that he will get to relive this again later on as well. So he wants to see as much suffering as he can so he can relive that later.
This is something he's planned. He's planned to do this. He's drugged her. And then he goes and sets up a camera so he can watch it later and get off on it again.
Yeah, this is a completely organised offender. So he knows to bring a camera, he knows to bring drugs. He knows what he's going to do. And he's also thought about this for a long time. And there'll be things that he's refining and doing differently and tweaking and is looking forward to doing, because this is something that he'll be thinking about all of the time. And in many ways, what's particularly twisted is you could consider that this for him is his craft. This is something that he wants to do well. And I imagine him looking at those videos and seeing what he could do differently next time.
Really?
Yeah, he'll be, again, reliving the experience and looking at what he might do next time he has access to another victim.
See, to me, it sounds insane. And I know you're probably going to say insanity means something, but to me, that seems someone who is insane.
Yeah, insanity is something very, very different. There's no signs of insanity here. This is sadistic. It's very different. It's very, very specific, very conscious, very deliberate, and he's very deliberate in his actions. There's something specifically that he wants out of it, and he's determined to get it at any cost.
What Moore did to Nicole was degrading, dehumanising. And the thought that anyone could do that, let alone a police officer, just tells me that he's really dangerous. So why didn't the police do anything with the evidence they had? It took over 12 months for Nicole to come forward and report Moore. But when she did, the reaction from her colleagues at Western Australia Police was shocking.
When Nicole initially made a complaint to Internal Affairs, the impression was that she was told to sort of, not make waves, not to do anything that was going to bring her to the attention of her colleagues and her making allegations. So she was, in many ways, she was dissuaded from actually taking it much further. A lot of times I don't think officers intentionally want to hush things up when allegations are made by a fellow officer. But those individuals who are making the allegations, they know that they will also be looked at as to whether or not those allegations are spurious or otherwise. So it's a difficult decision for an officer to come forward in the first place. But what they need is the support of the individuals who they're making the complaint to, for them to say, yes, we're supporting you, we're going to look into these matters. But she obviously didn't feel that she was getting the relevant support.
Nicole refused to go quietly. She demanded to be listened to. It was then she discovered that there was a smoking gun.
But what happened when Nicole Edwards came forward with a complaint? She was informed at that stage that there were actually images of her being sexually assaulted from images that they'd recovered from Moore's computers. So this was the first time she heard of this, so that would have been a significant moment for her.
So she didn't even know that she'd been filmed being assaulted?
No, at that point she wasn't aware of that.
Could you imagine? You've been attacked, assaulted, raped, and it's being filmed. The officers had wrongly assumed that Moore's footage of Nicole was consensual. In fact, it was a violent and sadistic rape. That raised the terrifying question of how many of the other women discovered on Moore's computer were being raped on camera, and how it was possible that experienced officers had been unable to spot this or to ask further questions.
Those officers who were investigating those images, at some point they had looked at them. Why weren't they considering trying to identify who those individuals were? Certainly for Nicole Edwards, when he asked her to give her basically her warrant number on more than one occasion. Bearing that in mind, if the officers had actually retrieved that particular image, that would have been an easy opportunity for them to say, right, we know this person's warrant number, we can do a check to find out who they are, and then she would be approached for them to make the necessary inquiries.
Why do you think they didn't do that?
You can only ask those individuals for them to explain it. I can't see how that type of image, that type of footage, and nothing is done to actually identify who the victim is.
Despite a serving police officer making such serious allegations, and there being video evidence of the attack, Nicole was warned off, and Moore was able to quietly leave the police, having served his 6-month sentence for misuse of the police database. It's unbelievable.
It beggars belief, really, that on face value, I don't think she was taken as seriously as she could have been taken at the time. So we know from the case that what came to light was there was video evidence of her abuse and her rape. And yet, even alongside her story, that didn't seem to be enough to do anything to apprehend and convict this man for what he'd done. There seemed to be the focus shifting back to this minor discretion, when actually the frustration she must have felt that the focus wasn't on this really, really serious offence that he'd committed. That must have been incredibly challenging for her.
In August 2019, as Moore was released back into the community, Australia's Corruption and Crime Commission finally agreed to take up Nicole's case.
So after Moore is released from prison, having served his sentence, he becomes a boiler fitter. And very quickly, he finds another victim. He basically went through the same process of meeting someone on a dating site, obviously befriending them to the point where that person felt comfortable around him, and he did what he has always done before. He then videoed his sexual encounters without her consent.
So after he comes out of prison, he just goes and rapes somebody else?
Within a short period of time, once he's released, he decided he was going to pick up from where he left off, and he actually rapes another.
This is the thing. If they'd have done their job right in the first place, then he'd have got a much bigger sentence, and he wouldn't have been able to be out on the street to do what he did to this other person.
It's a lack of professionalism on the part of those investigators, and that's what happened. You've had another victim.
Moore's latest victim stayed silent, for now. But how was Moore able to get away with these crimes, in plain sight, without any of his police colleagues suspecting or trying to do anything about it? I'm coming to speak with Fiona Mallon, a former detective chief superintendent with over 30 years of experience. Fiona is a specialist in sexual crimes. What do we know about Moore?
He was nominated for Police Officer of the Year, I think, in 2011. So he's known, he's liked, he's popular, and he's doing well. So, yeah, he's in a nice position.
The fact that he's been up for Officer of the Year, does that give me like a protection around him where he feels like he's untouchable?
Yeah, I think so. I suspect a lot of the senior managers, obviously because he was voted or nominated, thought, yes, he's really good at what he does, we're behind him, so he felt protected.
Listening to what he did to Nicole, at work he's having to show compassion, so he knows how to be in certain situations. But that's not him at all.
No. He's a Jekyll and Hyde completely. He can turn it on, he can turn it off. He's smooth, So he's very charming, he's very confident around women, and this is the other side to him, the predator, that will go and use his police position to have these relationships and then take them to the next level of rape and violence.
So Moore knows exactly what to say and how to behave to lure these vulnerable women into his web, and when he's got them there, he does these horrendous things to them. But Moore has a significant weakness. He's unable to control his sexual urges. It's only a matter of time before the law finally catches up with him. Nicole Edwards' relentless quest for justice meant that by January 2020, the case was in the hands of the sexual assault team. Moore was rearrested, and detectives were about to uncover the full, twisted depths of his crimes.
I was contacted by the sexual assault squad. It became apparent that the severity of the videos were far more than I could ever have imagined.
In January 2020, former Western Australia police officer Adrian Trevor Moore faced allegations of rape and sexual assault from fellow officer Nicole Edwards. What had initially been viewed as recordings of consensual sexual encounters found on Moore's computer were now revealed to be horrific rapes of at least 13 women.
They find that Moore has been videoing all his assaults on all the women he's attacked, and he's been cataloguing them and keeping them for his own gratification.
So he's basically creating his own evidence against himself, but he doesn't think anyone's looking.
Yeah. And from that point, that investigation team go out and try and identify all the women, the victims, on those videos to try and speak to them. So can you imagine that you get a knock on the door from a police officer and they tell you they've seen you in a video with having been attacked, violated by Moore, and that other people have seen it? It's just, you can't imagine the effect that's going to have on you.
You just got to think some of these women probably was drugged up, might not even have been conscious.
But also there's that bit about the missing pieces, isn't there? So you've been drugged and you pass out, and then you wake up and you feel ill or you're hurting or bleeding, and you can't mix the middle bit. But someone's come to your door and said, we've watched a video and we know what he's done in the middle bit.
Oh, can you imagine seeing that? That must have been horrendous. The impact on these brave women was both mental and physical, finally realising the full horror of what they endured at Moore's hands.
I remember going in and I took my clothes off and I just stood there and looked at myself, and because the injuries that I had were just horrific, and so I'd been cut right across here, I had it down my back, right down my whole body. I was bleeding from every orifice.
The way that Moore manipulated these women, gained their trust, played the police card, is cunning. But what's going on in his mind? Why would he want to violate these women in such horrific ways?
The victims of Adrian Moore suffered great distress at his hands. He tortured them, he raped them, he humiliated them. And so that is going to cause deep trauma for those people who are the victims of that crime. And this is something that they'll be dealing with for a very, very long time.
He's recording all his acts and what he's doing to these poor women. Well, that's evidence against himself, isn't it?
So offenders like Moore like to record what they're doing, if they can, because remember, this person's whole life is this paraphilia, it's this way of behaving, it's getting excitement out of someone's degradation, torture, pain, and they want to be able to relive that on tap. So the risk is worth taking, it's worth risking recording it. So what it enabled him to do is to relive the experience of the torture, which is really what he wanted to do, it's why he did it. So he had a trophy, and so sadly he could relive their pain and find sexual excitement in that.
Moore sounds like a textbook predator. The way he abused his authority and position to stalk his victims, it's frightening. And he was so cocky. I mean, he made videos as trophies. He was thinking, they're never going to catch me. Investigators scoured the footage for clues as to who these women were and catalogued the torture they endured.
On the footage, we know there was animals involved, so yeah, bestiality. There was contraptions made. There was urinating on these women. There was brutality to the harshest degree. All while these women were barely conscious. Some of them were unconscious because Moore had drugged these women.
Detectives discovered that Moore had also used psychological control, threatening his victims with the release of the recordings of their humiliating deals. He shamed them into silence, knowing his position as a trusted cop would make their voices harder to believe.
Moore absolutely used his profession to his advantage. We know on one of these dates he was actually wearing his West Australian police officer uniform, so he knew that these women could trust him.
Police discovered there were around 200 women in Moore's videos. For many, the extent of what he'd done to them came like a bolt from the blue.
It was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. To sit there beside someone that you know has already seen all the images, and then, as it progressed, the severity of the things that you had no idea, and seeing yourself in a way that's not like you. Your eyes are just totally on another planet, you speak. It's just, you can hardly understand, and you're struggling to speak, and you can see that you're struggling to speak, and really got no idea what's going on around you. And now, to be sitting here as being a survivor of one of Australia's worst serial rapists, I could never have imagined the impact it would have on myself, my family, and my friends.
Moore's attacks were meticulously planned and deliberate. 12 of his 13 victims were raped whilst he was a serving police officer. He used his experience as a cop not only to find his victims, but to cover his tracks, methodically destroying evidence from the scenes of his crimes.
He used to take a bag with him, like a grab bag, if you like. It was meticulously planned, so bleach, gloves, drugs, wine, everything that he could, and all the implements he used. I say implements, but torture implements, really. Then he'd clean up afterwards, meticulously. Moore took his offending to a level which is beyond comprehension. In some incidents, he has included animals, such as dogs, which makes you feel physically sick, but also you just can't imagine what those women went through. For me, this is the most vile, distressing part of the investigation.
In March 2020, a full 2 years after the police first discovered his videos, Moore was charged with 87 sexual offences. He would finally be forced to face justice, but this trial would be anything but straightforward. Were you there for the trial? I mean, what was that experience like?
I was there every day for the trial of Adrian Trevor Moore. Hearing all of the evidence at trial made your stomach turn. There were days that you would feel sick. Sadistic, depraved, misogynistic. This was the worst case the district court judge has seen, and Moore wanted them to all see it.
In March 2020, former Western Australian cop Adrian Trevor Moore was facing 87 charges for violent, sadistic rapes, dating back to 2007. Amid the media frenzy, one rumour persisted.
Do you get the idea here that there's somebody looking out for him, someone protecting him? There's always been the suggestion that Moore was actually protected by colleagues, whether higher up the chain or not. It's something that I don't think any of us can actually answer, but it's something that even the general public would ask themselves those questions. They said, how come he's managed to get away with these heinous crimes and everything else, and no action is taken against him?
We know that Moore was highly thought of, and often he would tell the victims that actually he was protected. So that was never really fully established or worked through. The suspicions, though, and the talk and the view that Moore was protected from within Western Australia were never proved.
Despite the mountain of video evidence and testimony from 13 victims identified from his footage, Moore pleaded not guilty.
Moore was not going down without a fight. He was a police officer. He knew the process. He chose to go to trial. He pleaded not guilty. So that not only forces your victims to have to testify in open court, it actually also forces a jury, a panel of members of the public, your mums and dads, your doctors and nurses, to sit there and watch his explicit material. He also had the opportunity for the trial to be heard by a judge alone, no jury. Moore didn't want to do that. He wanted the jury there to decide his fate. He wanted these strangers to watch this material, these women being assaulted and raped, that a judge described as sadistic, depraved, the worst material he's ever seen. And Moore wanted them to all see it.
The details of this case are horrific. I mean, you can understand why the survivors didn't come forward straight away. It must have been an agony to wait for their day in court, only then to relive it all again. It's horrendous.
Of the 13 victims that came forward at trial and bravely shared their story, each one of them had to see themselves on a screen performing these horrible acts against their will while they were drugged, barely conscious.
One woman that took the stand was the police officer that started it all and who had refused to give up until Moore was brought to justice, Nicole Edwards. I can't even imagine how Nicole felt in that courtroom, but how did she react when she saw on the video what he did to her?
She had a very visceral reaction to seeing herself on that video, being tortured and humiliated. In fact, she vomited when she saw herself in that position, which just goes to show how having to bear witness to that again is re-traumatizing. You put yourself back in that situation and you can literally feel what's happening to you and what happened at the time. So incredibly distressing and traumatic for her to see that again. Very much illustrated by the fact that she was sick and wanted to just pause the video and stop because she needed a break.
The survivors were not the only ones traumatized by the extreme images they were forced to watch in court.
It was horrific. I never saw the actual images because for the first time in my career as a court reporter, the media and all members of the public were forced to exit the room while they play this material because the district court judge deemed it too graphic for even us to see. The only people that had to see that footage was Adrian Moore, again, the victim. The victim was forced to relive this on the witness stand, and the jury. The jury had to sit and watch all of this disgusting material. Absolutely did a lot of damage to these jury members.
Why would he force a jury trial if he had a choice? I think it's about control, making people watch what he'd done.
The jurors actually requested to seek counselling during the trial, not after the trial, which is what is usually available to jurors. They wanted immediate counselling because of the nature of the graphic material that they were seeing. They put in an application to the judge, and the judge ultimately accepted that application, but not before Adrian Moore instructed his legal team to challenge that.
Wait, his lawyers didn't want the jurors to get counselling. Why?
They said that that would cause a mistrial, which means if the jurors are thinking that this material is so graphic, so depraved, Adrian's team thought that that meant that the jurors had already made up their mind about him. And that could be seen as an unfair trial because the juror's job is to stay objective throughout the entire thing. So Adrian Moore's legal team went,
this jury is not being objective. They've already made up their minds if they're wanting to seek counselling. Ultimately, the judge said, no, I'm going to allow the jurors to have counselling because he agreed that these regular mums and dads, these people, would need it.
The thought of a serving police officer committing such sadistic crimes rocked not only the local community, but the entire nation. On the 17th of October 2022, Adrian Trevor Moore was found guilty on all 87 counts.
It was a huge story. It was leading our news every single night. There was front page papers. The media gallery was packed. There was, for his sentencing later on, it was a full house in a public gallery. You couldn't get a seat. This was an extremely important case, and I think the community at large was so outraged by this, and I think that's reflected in the sentence that he got.
So the judge awarded life imprisonment 30 years, but it's the longest sentence for a rape offence ever in Western Australia. So the judge was really sending out a message.
And that's because of what he did to these poor women and how he did it, recording it, drugging them, and everything else that went along with it.
This might have been the end, but in typical fashion, Moore refused to go quietly.
His legal team tried to appeal that sentence. They tried to get it thrown out, saying it was too harsh a sentence, saying that the verdict should not be counted because this jury was not impartial when we were talking about them requesting counselling. They said that should be enough to overrun the entire sentence, the entire trial, and do it all again. Make these women come back, relive their trauma, and do it all again.
So they wanted a do-over. After dragging all these women through this once already, I mean, he's got no sympathy, no empathy.
I believe it went all the way up to Australia's highest court. That's how hard he pushed this and was denied.
Adrian Trevor Moore will spend the next 30 years in prison, while Western Australia police have been left to try and repair the damage and restore their reputation. In your opinion, what needs to change to stop this kind of thing happening again?
The change is required in terms of satisfying police officers that their line manager will support them when they come forward with these type of allegations. It was apparent that those women were drugged, so you would have to say to yourself that they hadn't given consent to be drugged. Therefore, that should be something that should be investigated.
Is this a case of somebody hiding in plain sight?
I'd be surprised if his colleagues didn't know what he was doing or had some inclination about it. But for whatever reason, that I can't come forward and say anything because I got no evidence. I've not got anything concrete. And I can understand them taking that view that, I can't raise my head over the parapet and say, I think he's committing serious sexual offences against someone.
And I can't help thinking about the impact this case has had on all of Moore's survivors. None of these women will look at the police in the same way again. I mean, and who can blame them?
No, you're right. None of these women will look at a police officer the same way again. And I think a lot of the community who watched this unfolding at home, watched the news reports, read the news reports, will be having those same doubts.
I've never heard anything so depraved and as cruel as to what Moore did to those women. And he was arrogant. He thought he'd get away with it. And the worst thing is, he did get away with it for years. It's only because of the bravery of Nicole and the other women that came forward that he's now exactly where he is, in prison.